Hey, Michael, you're back on the podcast from Infosec Labs. Appreciate you coming back on, man. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. I enjoyed it last time quite a bit, and I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting conversation. It's kind of outside, almost outside, because we talked about like cybersecurity from an entrepreneurial perspective last time, right? And then when I put the video out, a lot of people are just genuinely curious about AI generally. I mean, there's so many conversations that we can have about AI in so many different directions. I mean, I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine debating whether or not you would let AI kind of access your computer and all of your emails and your hard drive. And I'm like, and me instinctively, I was like, instinctively no, but then logic kicked in. I was like, hang on, you know what? Let them have at it. Because, maybe if I have access to the AI, it's like, it's not immediately you're not thinking of it as big brother, you're thinking, how can this help me? And I'm thinking, well, go through all of my emails. Maybe you can find something in there I can make money on. Hey, can you go through all my data, every file from way back when? Maybe you can figure something out to do it. Like, help me do, that old saying, like soul searching. The AI could probably help you just by going through everything that you have and like just siloing things into like neat little summaries, like, hey, well, this is what you did in this phase of your life in this season. It's like, I'd love to do that, but then there's so many things that there's so many conversations around security, data protection, and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy.
I'm going to make a note to try that. Find something that'll make me money.
Yeah, dump a whole bunch of data in there. Where in this where can I capitalize on? And it will probably give you a pretty good, punch list of like, oh, and then you could probably order it in probability. But
Maybe
because it has that utility. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a complete novice with AI and anything tech, right? But I have a software platform. I hire people to build it. So there's security risks there from a human factor standpoint. And then there's like my software system. It's essentially, it has password protection. It goes in. We have a library of influencers in there. From data that we paid for, essentially like we pay for multiple different APIs and access to data banks where we can collect this information, public profiles. So that's stored in the platform. So there is personal information there, even though it's considered public by different sort of walled gardens out there like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. But once it's in my database, it's people's information, right? So there's certain things that I have to do to make sure that's protected, and that the only people accessing it are people who've paid for my system, who've accepted the terms and conditions, the GDPR, disclaimer and all that jazz. So that now when they're in there, I'm from a liability standpoint, I'm somewhat protected as far as I hope. But then there's also like the risks of like, nefarious people just busting in there. So today there is that, and and I guess that's one of the reasons why I really want to have this conversation, because maybe I could learn something from you in terms of what I could be doing in my own platform. But today, I think the topic, and we both discussed this because this is a big one, it's the AI conundrum with CISO, and CISO is the Chief Information Security Officer. And look, I had to get information on this from AI. Just so you know, I went to ChatGPT and said, I don't know what the conundrum is exactly, AI. Can you help me? So AI gave me the questions that I'm going to ask you today, just so you know.
Well, that's great. I love that.
Okay.
Conversation with an AI.
Absolutely. I have conversations with AI, both Gemini and ChatGPT. I've got these two. It's like the two angels on my shoulder. Like and I am becoming almost dependent on it now. I love being able to have that conversation with AI. But here's what it said about the conundrum. It said there's the allure of AI for cybersecurity. So we're talking about enhanced threat detection. We're talking about automated security tasks. So it's like a machine that just never gets tired. It can do all these things, and it could do it almost instinctively. It can learn on the go, right? And then you've got the proactive defense, which kind of falls into that. And then that's the good side. And then the bad side is, the shadowy side, as it puts it here. Of course, ChatGPT's got that flowery language, doesn't it? The shadowy side of AI security. Then you have adversarial AI. So one side, and we did speak about this last time a bit on the podcast, like you have a lot that you can put into the AI from a defense standpoint, but then you have the adversarial, the attacker. So you have adversarial AI being, malicious actors could develop really good AI to attack your thing, and you'd be sure that they will be doing that if you're defending against something, right? Explainability and bias. Not sure I understand that exactly, but it's to do with AI algorithms being kind of hard to understand because they're big and they're complex, and not all of them are open source, especially when you're looking at closed systems. Because we're building AI into DistroList right now, a small version, like a baby. Like it's not a large language model, it's just a language model, and it just has enough information. we knocked one of the L's off that one, but it's intelligent enough to understand questions. And so if someone's saying, "Hey, I want to find an influencer that does this, but I don't have too much money," it will interpret that as, okay, so you need guys with smaller people with smaller audiences, maybe really niche, that kind of, so it will understand it and then curate you a list. So that's like the first step. And then maybe even the next step would be like putting together DMs and outreach messages and that kind of thing. But we're kind of building it. I mean, it's early days. Anyway, the other thing about it is, so not understanding the algorithms. And then the next bit is data security risks, right? So we're talking about kind of like what I was saying about my hard drive. Like if you give it access to everything, right? Then you're vulnerable, right? Because who's reading it? Which platform's reading it, right? So that's the conundrum. Let's talk about. Let's go. Let's just go back and forth on this. Let's see where we go.
Okay. Let me start by saying something about how you can use AI and how you cannot use AI. So when the latest versions came out, I got a little excited, and I said, okay, let's see what it can do to help my security. So I told each of the major AI platforms one at a time. I said, scan my network and tell me about my vulnerabilities. Now that would have been really neat if it would have gone off, scanned my network, and came back with a list of here are the hosts that need updating, here are the hosts that need patching, and so on and so forth. It didn't do that. He came back and it said, each one, same answer. As an LLM, I cannot scan your network, but here are some products you can go buy to accomplish that. If you need help running those, come back. Not exactly the answer I wanted or expected, but in retrospect, an AI can't do something that's quite that innovative. What's it scanning for? What is my network? Does it know? Those kinds of questions make it difficult for an AI to perform that task. Another task I played with was I said, okay, let me go to each one of these and ask it to do some coding for me. So I said to each one, write me a Python script to calculate a Fibonacci series between two values and tell me how many entries there are and which ones are prime. Kind of a non-trivial code, but
sounds hard.
not that difficult,
No? Okay.
No,
It can be
not
worked.
really.
It's not difficult, but there's a formula, right? It can be worked out.
Yes, I mean, I'm no coding expert anymore, but I thought, well, before I ask AI, I'll do it myself, and I did, and it took me about 20 minutes, and it worked. So I asked Gemini, and Gemini said, "Here it is." So I copied and pasted it into my Python interpreter, and boom, it worked. I asked the two others, and with both of the others, it said, no problem. It generated a Python script, which I copied and pasted into my interpreter, and they both crashed. Bad syntax, bad input. They just didn't do what they were supposed to do. That doesn't mean that Gemini is always better, though I happen to like Gemini. But it does tell us you have to be careful which AI you use for which purpose and how much you rely on the answer. So if I had taken the result from the two that failed the actual interpreter and passed it along to somebody, they would have found it doesn't work. And that could have been an embarrassment. So you have to be careful. You have to validate or vet the solution you get and ask it a couple of different ways. So you're sure that you're really capturing the different angles and getting an answer that makes sense.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I actually do the same. Nothing as complex as that, but even sometimes like simple equations. And I'm talking about you know what? Usually I'm trying to figure out like my sales funnel. Like, if I run ads to this effect and I get, cost me 250 per lead that comes through, and this is how many people come through. If we assume 30% this, and I kind of go through like a drop off rate analysis, I say how much would I make, on that month, and how much would it, if you could forecast it with like a 5% increase per month. And it starts to initially the first question is usually the simple one, which is like just a finite answer. It would be correct in most cases, although sometimes it has failed there too. But that I figured that was just down to me and my bad prompting. But then as you get a bit more complex and you start asking it to kind of build out a full financial forecast for you, like, okay, now factor in all my expenses. Now factor in this. Now what about tax? And it's like you do all that, then this thing starts to it becomes a mess. But it looks good. It looks like it worked. It looks like it did the job for you. So you have this nice looking like data set, this spreadsheet that you can, put into a spreadsheet, and then kind of become a millionaire overnight, a spreadsheet millionaire, as I say, right? So you're like, okay, this is working for me, and then you start actually looking at it closely, and like, okay, well, that didn't add up that correctly. That formula's wrong, and you start to realize that there are problems there. But it's constantly learning. It's learning a lot, right? And then I spoke to a guy called Wesley Stevens recently on the podcast. Actually, he built his own AI. It's not an open AI. It's not an API. It's not a plugin. It's something that he built from the ground up, which is really impressive considering he's a one-man band. And I was like, "How did you? What is this?" And he goes, "Well, AI is not that new. The machine learning element of like being able to understand like the language and basically make assumptions based off data isn't that complex. It's just that what you're seeing there is the large language model. You're seeing like a massive data set, so it can kind of go in like a billion different directions, whereas you can still create the same kind of machine learning for like really a closed loop of tasks, which is what a lot of companies are going to be, I would assume, in the AI cybersecurity space, be looking at. But like just generally everywhere, like any company, like for example phone network providers, that's just network providers, gaming companies, anyone who has a server they want to keep private, but they want to have access and use AI. They're going to be building these closed versions of it, like these babies that aren't large language models per se, but they're really just trained on its own
models. I like that.
Yeah, right. They're just language models. You could just speak to it.
Yeah, you have to be very careful with trusting the results you get.
Yeah.
Because number one, it's possible the question you're asking requires data that the AI doesn't have. And it's likely, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's likely if it doesn't have the data, it'll make it up.
And that's been happening. They talk about this, the hallucinations, right? They call it the hallucinations. Yeah. It's making stuff up.
So I recently went on a trip and I couldn't find a carrier that would go nonstop from where I am to where I wanted to go, and so I popped up Gemini. I said, "Who flies nonstop from here to there?" And I got an answer, but the answer was wrong. So I went to another AI. I said, "Okay, who flies nonstop from here to there?" Nobody. So I went to the third one, and it gave me a different set of answers from the other two, which were all wrong. So why is that? This is a simple question. Who flies from, I'll make it up, from Austin to Cancun nonstop? It's not nobody. I know, because I've done that many times. So there should be a simple answer. But the answer may have issues. Number one, how did I ask the question? Did I say who flies direct from Austin to Cancun? Just to make up two cities? And lots of places fly direct, but that doesn't mean it's a nonstop. So you have to be careful. Also, if I pose this question, the implication is I'm planning a trip from Austin to Cancun. And if that information gets out, and then I book the flight using AI, somebody knows when I'm going to be out of the country. Not a good thing for my home security. Or any security for that matter.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you talk about the everyday user, the vast population of people who will just become more and more reliant on AI for just those questions, for exactly that. To just say, hey, look, what's the best immigration lawyer near me? Not just to ask Google and come up with the usual rankings, but like it actually tell you, well, based on all this information, we think it's this, right? And you're not having to ask a human about it. Or I need to, it's like, it doesn't matter. I've used AI to write birthday cards, thank you cards, because because I always find those hard. You know, my wife's given me an empty card. Hey, write so-and-so a letter. I'm like, oh God. I've got to think about something good to say about this person. Like, you know, like I almost like, so now I'm like, well, so I'll just put a couple of bullet points into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, you know, here's a couple of things about this person. Write me a thank you card. Bang. It will just give me a decent one. I'll say, well, add this. And it'll give me a pretty good response. And I'll use that, you know, for the most part. Email's the same. Even when it comes to sales pitches, I'll dump a sales pitch in there and I'll say, hey, look, there's some prompts that pre-made prompts I have that were actually given to me by copywriters, but like really helps kind of break up a sales letter so you can space it out and kind of pace yourself nicely. There's really, really useful things that you can do with it. But equally, as more of that happens, it's going to become more expectant from the consumer base. So more and more companies are going to have some kind of AI built in. No one's really just going to let ChatGPT, as in OpenAI, and Gemini just have rule the roost. They're going to have, but every company's going to have like their own thing. Right now, they're plugging in so that they can just get started. But I think everyone's going down that road of like building something for themselves that you can interact with, so you can interact with their service or their product. They're going to remove certain layers of their business so that you can now interact with it. But that means, from a company standpoint, they have AI now fully embedded. It's not a plug-in to somebody else, but that's a data security risk in itself. But now they have their own thing. They're going to have their own thing embedded. So this topic of like the AI conundrum with chief information security officers, it's a big one because they can't get out of it. It's like it's coming, and it's going to. And you think it's a tidal wave yet? No, you're looking at the swell. It's going to get big.
Right. One of the things that CISOs tend to talk about when they talk about AI is how can I use it to improve my security? That's, after all, the job of the CISO, and it's a hot topic. It's a hot topic for a few reasons, not the least of which is the more sophisticated risk that I mentioned about Austin and Hong Kong, or whatever I said.
Cancun.
Austin and Cancun, I'm revealing something. Well, if I'm a company and I'm building some code as part of my overall product, and one of my developers says, well, let's see if Gemini can make this better. And so I upload into the chat box a piece of my code and ask Gemini, can you make this more efficient, faster, and make sure there are no bugs in it? Well, I've just given that code to Gemini. So Gemini has it.
That's the thing. Like there's 2 points there. Like when I was speaking about giving it, like relying on AI to kind of show me how to make money, I've just given it, if I had run that example or that case study where I've taken my entire database, my emails, whatever, my financials, my tax returns, like when have I paid too much? What can I claim back? Like, like just out thinking that I could go around like expensive accountancy fees, but like, and just you give that to something like Gemini or ChatGPT, it now has it. Now, are you important enough? Is it going to be looking at you as a target? We don't know. We don't know how it could be used nefariously. We don't. The point blank period. You hope that there's rules and regulations in place, right? That they're going to be, but you have no.
Even if, pardon the interruption, but even if we completely trust that ChatGPT, OpenAI, Gemini, Copilot, whatever, that they will not target you, it's still a part of their database now.
Yeah.
They know it and may use it to advise somebody else. So it's possible that the code I just uploaded and asked Gemini to make better, maybe somebody else has got the same process. Hey, Gemini, can you help me write something to do this? And Gemini said, well, as a matter of fact, I can.
Yeah, I just did this for another guy. Here's what I did. Yeah, and that's bad too. It's just kind of passing it on to somebody else. Yeah. Well, and then there's also that you also said if you're speaking to it in the way that I am, in the way that you described looking for a plane, a direct flight, you mentioned, yeah, your home security is at risk now because it knows that you're probably going to be taking that flight on those days.
Right.
And that's another, that's information you don't necessarily want just floating around, especially if you have like high security clearance. Like there's a lot there that is going to be an issue. I wonder how like the agencies are dealing with this. Like, don't you dare ask it for advice. Yeah, it's almost like it's like having the exams in the old days. Like, don't bring a calculator to the exam. Why not? Everyone's got a calculator in the outside. No one's going to try and figure this crap out without a calculator. Like, go to any office anywhere, they'll have a calculator when you give them this problem. Like, right. so why do I have to do it with my bloody pencil? And it's kind of like the same deal, right? It's like, don't use AI. Well, it's like, well, you're giving me tough stuff to figure out. I need to use AI to be able to conduct and execute against my task, my role. And that's going to be an issue. So it's kind of like you don't want to use it. Intellectually, you get it. It's a risk. Yet you kind of have to just to stay up to date or stay relevant in the workplace against your peers and that kind of thing. And it goes full circle, right? It goes back to the consumer that way because now the companies are using it. Like you can't stop using it because it's just the utility is too good.
That's right. So if you're using one of the AIs to do whatever it is you're doing, you can put some guardrails. That's everybody's favorite expression these days, guardrails. Yeah, well, how well do they work when the car is going off a cliff? But never mind that.
Yeah. When I picture a guardrail, like I picture something I could hop.
Like, right. Yeah. So, the guardrails is not a great term in my opinion, but there are ways to protect against putting in sensitive information. So it's one thing even at work to tell your AI, hey, I want to make beef lasagna tonight. What ingredients should I stop and buy at the market on the way home? Well, that's pretty simple and non-sensitive. But if I'm trying to do something a little more sensitive, then I got to be careful not to give the AI too much information. And there are ways that companies are using everything from firewalls to DLP-ish kind of things to stop divulging corporate sensitive information to an AI. And to me, that's a good thing because you can't just provide everything to the AI. It's risky. Just like I wouldn't stand on a corner and scream into my phone, hey, Siri, how do I get to this place? Because everybody can hear me. And what if I don't want everybody to know where I'm going?
Yeah, that's right. And of course, if you're saying, "Hey, if I'm going on the way home from work, where can I go to pick up the ingredients, and what do I need for this dish that I want to make?" You see, if you're talking to the same AI account through an account that you set up with it, like I do with my own ChatGPT, it knows everything else that I've spoken to it about. So it knows, it has a profile on me. It knows exactly where my workplace probably is. It knows where my home is. It probably knows my exact route home. So it could probably pinpoint with exact precision as to where I will be at what time, based on the information it has. buying exactly what, knowing exactly probably what card I was going to use, because it probably knows something about my finances too. And so, okay, when you think about it like that, it gets worrying, because it's like, well, it's like that's information you would normally consider, well, that's private. That's me and my family would know my route and that kind of thing. If somebody else just walked up to you in the office or on the street and just told you they knew all of that information, you'd be pretty worried. But now you've just told this massive data bank, ginormous data bank, that could easily, as you said, hand that kind of information over to the next person that asks something similar, or someone querying it to find you, using it as the mode, if they can figure out a way to navigate the system.
Exactly. So, we were talking about using AI to increase your security, and I said, you can't just ask an AI, scan my network and tell me what the vulnerabilities are, because that doesn't work. For lots of good reasons, that doesn't work. However, what if I have a scanning tool, and I use that scanning tool, and it gives me output? And I said, okay, this is too complicated, too long, kind of TLDR thing. So I upload that to my favorite AI, and I say, make sense of this for me. What should I do to resolve my issues? Well, depending upon the length of the document and complexity, it probably can give you some good advice. And now you've just given your internal scan information to the AI. So what does that mean in terms of vulnerability? Have you revealed too much? Probably. Could you have found another way to do it without revealing so much? Probably. So it's a matter of finding creative ways to present the data to the AI so that you get what you want without divulging what you don't want to divulge. It's not that complicated.
It's not complicated, yeah, but it requires some kind of we have to devise a system, and I guess that's what you're doing with Infosec, right? You're creating steps.
Yeah. So
like, how do you? We know what we have to do, but how do you do it?
That's right. So first of all, we have to know that we have to do it.
Yeah.
So I want to give the results of the scan to Gemini, OpenAI, whatever it is, but I don't want them to know who I am or where I came from. Well, one of the things I can do is I can change the IP addresses, or I can change the host names. And I can do that using an editor and then give it to the AI. And now the AI won't know my IP addresses, but I will know, because I'll know the first 6 digits, no problem. But anybody else won't know whose network this is. That's a way to protect yourself. And it's a good way to get the benefit of the AI, who will still give you ideas as to what's the best way to go about patching these systems or closing these vulnerabilities, but not have the detailed information about which systems are these.
And when you say systems, you're including the human factor too. It's like you're including the meatware behind the hardware, right? It's like because it's relevant. You can create as many systems you want. It's like, but when we refer to systems, it relies on people following those systems and actually.
Well, that's a very good point. That's true. Though, please don't try to patch me.
Yeah. I'm sure they're figuring that out. Have you seen that little brain thing? What's that called now?
The neural link.
The neural link. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they could start patching us soon.
Yeah, pretty soon, but they won't get that. They won't get me anywhere near that.
Yeah. With a straight Borg. Everyone's becoming a cyborg at that point.
Yeah, my brain is already scrambled. I don't want to scramble it even more.
Yeah, right. But even then, and factor in security risks there. It's like, well, hang on. Now this is like, you thought performance enhancing drugs or something. Now watch me with this. Look at me, like I'm going to be, it's like the limitless pill from that movie where you're like just super smart. Like you now know everything. You can just look at data and understand it and figure out how it can benefit you in however many ways, right? So I mean, you think that's when you think of that. Look, if you're going to put a chip in my head, I want that. Okay.
The neural link is not nearly like that.
You know,
the Neuralink is just intended to help people who have severe disabilities like paralysis be able to control things with their mind.
I know,
And
but we all dream. Yeah, but it's like when you talk about when Elon Musk was discussing it, he was like, okay, well, you have this bandwidth, don't you? Like the speed at which you can access information is how fast your thumbs can type, and then you have to read it, then you have to decode it, then you have to understand it, then you have to do something else with it. So it's like that can all happen in a split second or
right.
milliseconds. I was like, okay. So then you naturally think, whoa, how much could I throw up there? Like, like how much could I, how much, but I get it. Look, we've bounced around this conversation, but I want it to be, I want you to speak about systems. Let's follow a system. I had some questions here because I want this to be very useful for any CISO, any person, any company who's thinking about like, what do I do to protect myself? Like what? And if it's a chief information security officer, I have to keep saying that out loud because I keep forgetting what CISO stands for. But you want to make sure that like there is a path. So why don't we let's just kind of piecemeal this. Let's go through some of the questions that I've put together for a general AI cybersecurity discussion. Let's just quickly go through like the basics, because these I feel like can be just broken up a little bit as well. Like people can take these in as sound bites, but equally it will help us kind of stay on track, because I will happily just go to Mars with this if you want. Which as I have been doing. But then also let's talk about like the steps, the steps to actually setting up a system, like proactively doing something to deal with this conundrum. Like, well, because I know you have a couple of areas in your business. You have the go to market, and then you have the consulting. So this will be, I think, falling into the consulting side, right? It's like let's look at your situation. Okay, and then maybe if we have time, we'll jump in to look at my software. Which is probably like SAB to use a proper password system. Anyway, okay, so we bounced around, but as an introduction to cybersecurity, I had a question here, which was, how is AI currently utilized in the field of cybersecurity? And we've spoken about it just from 1,000 miles up, but what is it, if we're a practical cybersecurity company, or a company looking to find a cybersecurity agent or a third party to help, what would be the thing that they're doing right now?
Well, there are a few different things. First of all, there's research. So if I'm going to back up a little bit, and let's say I've got a client who's in some particular vertical field, and I don't know much about that, I'm going to say, hey, tell me about this vertical field. What are the security issues? What are the problems? What are the common solutions? And I'll get some good answers. Of course, I'll have to go through and validate them, because I don't want to look foolish in front of my client. But that's a good way to start. So I can do general research on AI without divulging anything. And that's okay. And even if somebody knows I've got a client coming up in this particular vertical, that's okay. I don't care. Somebody else from that vertical can come to me and hire me too. That's all right too. I don't mind. But the bigger benefit of AI and security is being able to do more detailed research and to be able to look at specific instances and analyze them. So if you've looked at any of the demos, you can see that you can point, especially for the multimodal AI platforms, you can point your camera at some code, and it'll tell you what the code is doing, which I think is incredible. And there's some tremendous benefits to that. So I'm going and I'm looking at all these different codes that are being written. And if they let me bring my phone in, which they probably shouldn't, but if they let me bring my phone in and I point to the code, I can validate that the coder is writing exactly what he's supposed to be writing. That's not typically my job, but it's a fun little side thing to do. So that's a good thing. That's a benefit of AI. The way companies are using AI depends on the kind of company they are. So we've got some security companies that are using AI because they're bringing in tons of data. For example, one of the tools that's ever increasing in popularity is called a SIEM, SIEM, Security Information and Event Monitoring. It's a terrible name, but that's what it is. What
Yeah.
it means is that you
I can see they
collect.
could put a few letters on the end of that and it will go completely wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Let me Google that and see what you
I
mean.
mean, they don't name it the best. They don't.
No, but the idea of a SIEM is that what it does is it collects information from your different security tools or non-security tools. So if you have an antivirus or EDR, it'll collect information from which systems have been the target of phishing, which ones have been compromised by a virus or something like that. And if you then look at your firewall or your DLP, the SIEM can look at all this and say, wait a minute, this one was targeted by a phishing attack, and now its credentials have been compromised. So we draw the conclusion, and this is something the SIEM does all by itself. We draw the conclusion that the user must have clicked on the phishing link and compromised his credentials, and therefore the next step is to do whatever it is, depending upon the system. That's an excellent use of a SIEM, and it's much more powerful and quick when you integrate it with some sort of intelligence, artificial intelligence. It isn't something that can replace a human, but it's something that can sure make things go faster.
Okay. I kind of like it's like that analysis tool, right? It's like you can like wave the magic wand and just understand what you're looking at. Then
Correct.
it's just I can see that being very useful. Okay, so if that's that's how it's being used on a professional level by people in the cyber, with this, if they're wearing the cybersecurity hat, this would be a very practical way for them to actually use the technology to enhance their role as experts to create defense around your business, not necessarily for AI, just defense in general, right? We're talking about phishing, right? Okay, but then
let me just go one step further, and then one step further is number one, you have to make sure that the answers you're getting are correct, because the hallucination issue we were talking about a few minutes ago can rear its ugly head here too, and you're going to end up doing the wrong thing if you just blindly follow what the AI tells you to do. But the flip side is it's not just the security professionals that are using AI. The attackers, otherwise known as the bad guys, are also using AI. And they're using AI not just in conjunction with a scanner, but they're also scouring the web for information about your firm so that they can launch more sophisticated attacks. So a few years ago, I did a penetration test on a pretty big company. And one of the things I did was I made phone calls, or I had some of my people make phone calls to executives of that company to do social engineering. And we got lots of good information. And at the end of the day, at the end of the test, I was asked, well, how did you get these phone numbers? These are unpublished phone numbers. I said, they're not unpublished. They're published on your website. And they went and checked and said, yes, that's right, they are. So if you don't want people to know those phone numbers, you know the old joke, if you want to keep something a secret, don't tell anyone.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's funny, the old phone numbers. When I first started out in sales, this is going back. You might this is sidebar story, but kind of relates to accessing phone numbers, right? We used to, as a salesperson, way back in the day, I worked for those kind of, they're just like a telesales center, but like really boiler room style, where you have all the phone banks and like you got your floor manager there just telling you, get on the phone, power hour, stand up, you're not allowed to sit down for that hour. Like all this, if you put your phone down from your neck to, you can hold it on your ear, the old phones, right? And if you put it down, you get fined, so you have to keep on dialing. They used to have these like rebuttal. They had these rebuttal handbooks, and like one of the things was like hilarious. You call like the executive of Sony, right? But you want to get his direct cell phone number. You don't want to keep talking through the gatekeeper. So how do you get the number? How do you get that number on the CRM? How do you do it? And there was training to the effect of call him as if you're DHL. Say, hey, I'm DHL, got a package to deliver. Just need to confirm the cell phone number. it's like there's that one, and then there was like all the horticultural uh someone from the horticultural department in front of the, because you can find someone's address relatively easily. So like I'm outside, so you could find Google Maps, you'd find out like if there's trees outside. So hey, I'm here. We've got to cut. There's 2 trees outside, but they didn't say which one to cut down. I've got to cut down a tree. It's going to be left or right. Which one's it going to be? Can you give me his cell phone number so I can call him? And then you know, your gatekeeper would, you think these are bad, but like I'm not doing it justice. But like you would say it with, you know, as if, right? You'd say it as if, and then you'd get some pushback. Well, if you haven't got his number, like, well, listen, love, I'm going to cut down the tree. So I've been told here to cut down a tree. Is it the one left or the right? So put him on the phone. So we'd get him, and then we'd collect. And so when the guy comes on the phone, you'd keep it going. You say, okay, well, let me just confirm your cell phone number. What is it? And then he'd say, don't cut down my trees. Yes, this is my number. Bang, you've banked it. And then you kind of just hang up, and then so you call back 2 weeks later, and that as the salesperson representing the company, but now you have access to the number. And that was like, you had all of these little. So one was DHL, one was the horticultural, and you had all of these different things, and it was in a book, and this was what we were trained on, and this is how you would access and get numbers, and that was back then. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's long gone. But I'm pretty sure people could still fall for that now. To be honest with you. They don't want the wrong tree cut down.
The old tricks don't go away.
Just
because the newer, better way to do it doesn't mean the old way doesn't work. And in fact, if more people are going to the new way, the old way becomes a wide open avenue to get information.
Right, because people are so worried about the AI. Oh no, it's just a person. They just from DHL. Like, well, yeah, here's my number. Boom, got it. It's not necessarily a credit card number, but it's a phone number. You know, things can be done with phone numbers these days. They're attributing a lot of security measures to a cell phone number because it's harder to create than an email, which you can do instantly for free.
And lots of people are using cell phones for their second factor authentication.
Yes, so that's
using an authenticator app of some sort. They're getting an SMS message, and if I have your cell phone, I can clone your phone. I'll get the SMS message at the same time you do.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
So if I'm quicker than you and I use the code first, when you use it, it'll say, sorry, code has expired. And you'll probably just say, oh, blast, and you'll do it again.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I'm already in.
And change the password, probably. Like, I mean, that's bad. It's crazy. Okay. So we can use it as a way to kind of put us on the right track. We can use AI to assess not necessarily AI threats, but just general threats. Like, okay, a threat like I just described, or phishing attacks, or that kind of thing. And it can kind of put us on the right track. It might give us bad information, so we have to fact check it. But at least it puts us on the right kind of avenue, right? It may be on the right direction. And we can kind of like, we know which way we're going. And that's useful, especially in a boardroom meeting when you've been told to explain what you've been doing for the last 24 hours. So it's like, you know, that helps, right? But then equally, the attackers will be using it for the same reason. They're not necessarily using AI in and of itself to launch the attack, but they could be using it to find the holes, the problems, and they're using it as a way to kind of how I put the questions together initially was like, give me talking points on this subject. So it can kind of put you in the right frame of mind, looking in the right places, so that you can then use the pre-existing tools that are already available to you, like phishing, like malware and various other things, to actually launch a digital attack.
Spoken like a true expert.
I know, right? And that's ChatGPT. Listen, I did some research, and of course, I didn't go to like Wikipedia this time. You know, this was really just Q&A back and forth, right? This is how people could understand it. So, okay, it puts us on the right track, but in this scenario, no one's actually using AI as the tool to make the attack, right? So is that going to happen? Are people able to do that through the LLMs, or?
I think that's already happening.
That's happening.
Yeah. You can tell AI, go attack this company. That's not enough. But if you've done research, a little bit like what you did to collect the information for this podcast, you asked a series of questions, you got some answers, And if I know how you work, you probably went back and refined your questions to get better answers. That's what the bad guys do too. But they're
Yeah.
not looking for answers for a podcast. They're looking for information about a company and its vulnerabilities. So the first thing, if I were in that position, the first thing I would do is I'd say, go to an Acme Widget Company website and here, give it the address. Say, find me all the potentially sensitive information on the website. Now, depending upon which AI, you might get some pushback. You should get some pushback, but you might not. And so you might end up
Maybe it's just how you ask it.
Yes, exactly. So you don't say, give me a good attack vector for this company. You say, show me what email addresses and phone numbers are listed on any page of the website. And show me where their products are described on the website. You can go a level deeper. So instead of saying, show me where the sensitive information is, you ask specific questions that will likely reveal where the security information is. You collect that information, and then you use that to launch an attack.
Yeah, I've just got a job with XYZ company as a security officer. Give me a quick summary of what I should be talking about in my first meeting. What kind of potential things? If you ask it, frame it like that, it might. Oh, let me help you. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know.
But yeah, some years ago, I did a physical security audit for a company. Actually,
I mean, by the way, sorry to interrupt. That's how I ask it for medical advice. By the way, if I ask it point blank, it will say, "Can't advise you. That's medical. Go speak to a doctor."
Yeah.
But if I ask it through a different lens, it will give you the information.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
So I have to say, a few years ago, I did a physical security audit of a company, of a county actually, and I went in there, and I got in because their security, it was good, but it wasn't good enough. So my partner and I, we got into the facility, and we started walking around, and somebody looked at us and said, "This is security. What are you doing here?" And I said, "It's okay. I'm with the security team. We're doing an audit of your security tokens," which is a statement that means nothing.
Mm.
And they said, "Oh, okay, go ahead." Just say it with confidence, and you'll probably get away with it.
Mm.
Using AI is a way to get the confidence for a particular situation so you can speak with authority.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I use it daily for that exact task. With podcasts and topics that I'm not familiar with, but I want to hold a conversation. It helps there. Even when I'm just trying to learn something new, I can sit and spend hours watching YouTube videos, trying to self-educate the way I used to. Or I can take a little bit of information from there, dump it into ChatGPT or a Gemini, whatever, and get a more concise version of what I'm trying to understand. And it will let me know if I'm on the right direction once I pose the problem, and that's very useful. So, I do remember going back to whether people are using AI directly to actually launch the attacks. They're using it right now to find openings, find holes. I do remember there was something in the it was something about you asking AI to give you information about some. It went. I think it was a newspaper, or it was some kind of online. It was content of some sort that had a paywall, and it actually just bypassed the paywall to get you the information because you are very specific about what you wanted to know. It just somehow jumped past it. It was a bit. I wish I'd actually pull that up. Actually, it was something, but it's it has been done, and so they had to. OpenAI had to put in restrictions so they wouldn't do that again. But what are those restrictions? How do you tell AI not to do that? How do you actually police that? Because it has the capability.
Yes. Give it a credit card.
Yeah.
Well, you can just tell AI, find a credit card and use it. The ability of AI to collect that kind of information is astounding. So if you're trying to understand something, AI is a great way to understand it. I'll confess that I cheated recently. There was a very long report that came out maybe 6 months ago um, about the use of AI to fight cyber warfare, and it was put out by the government. It's available for free, and I downloaded it, and I started reading it, and my eyes just completely glazed over. It was a 100-page document filled with gobbledygook, and I couldn't get past the page without falling asleep. So I uploaded it to Gemini, and I said, "Summarize
Summarize.
for me." And in
Yeah.
those seconds, it did.
Yeah.
And from what I read of it, the summary was excellent. And so I used the summary, actually went to the other AIs and asked the same thing, and they gave me similar answers. So I figured either they're all colluding to deceive me or it's right.
Yeah. But when you ask it, so you've given it a data set and you're saying, just give me summaries of this thing. Then it's less likely, unless you're giving it mathematical equations, to figure out something new. If it's just going to summarize stuff, it's pretty good with staying within context, and it's good at just.
I agree.
It's very useful there, and that's where I see, a lot. Most people are using it, I think, for that initially. But now there's a lot now happening in the art, in with regards to creating art and imagery, and using it to kind of you want your phone you want it to start reading things visually through your phone, using the optics there. There's a lot it can go down. But okay, so let's stay on task. So we've got this situation. AI is being used, but it's not kind of like a
It's not
like a
It's not.
when I think of an AI attack, I'm thinking of something from the movies, right? Where it just completely, you've got everything shuts down, lights black out. We're talking about people using AI to kind of jump paywalls at this stage, but it's getting smarter. It could very well start causing blackouts if people wanted to, because it has the capability, because it's tied into the more people use it, it's tied into more networks, it's accessing more computers. You never know when it wants to jump the barrier, i.e. jump the paywall. And kind of integrate with your system. I don't know if that's a real possibility. I think it is.
It's absolutely a real possibility, which is one of the reasons that the government is very concerned about critical infrastructure. Most critical infrastructure is not sufficiently protected. So, as an example, we don't have to talk about nuclear facilities. We don't have to talk about power plants. Let's talk about water treatment plants.
Traffic lights.
Traffic lights. But in water treatment plants, what do I care about that? Right? And I did a security analysis for one of the major water providers in the US. And I said, you've got open access. Just open the manhole cover and go down there, and I've got open access to your systems. And anybody could change the filtration parameters, and you'll end up with poisoned water. And they looked at me and they said, that's nonsense. If anybody wants to poison our water, let's just rent a rowboat, go into the middle of the lake, and pour in a bunch of chemicals and overwhelm the filtration system. I said, yeah, well, that's very interesting, but you've got a California lake, and what if the attacker is in Moscow? A rowboat would take a long time to get there. But if you're open to the internet, then they can get to you and make changes to the filtration system. They can not only poison your water, they can poison the water of lots of different water systems across the country at the same time.
Right. Some big coordinated attack.
Yeah.
And that'll you're worried about nuclear. That's going to wipe out half the population right there. Right. No access to clean water.
Yeah, you inject bad parameters into a water filtration system, and you're going to have very bad water. And while a lot of people look at that and they say, well, that's not a real threat.
That's a real threat.
It is a real threat.
Yeah.
If somebody goes in a rowboat in your lake and is starting to dump chemicals, you got cameras that see them, you'll probably catch them and you can do something. But if they're across the world, around the globe, and they're accessing your system, you won't know.
Yeah.
So controls.
People talk about these 3 to 7 day fasting cycles that they're doing. Okay, that's food. Try do that with water.
Yeah.
So if you haven't got access to water, if it's a coordinated large scale attack, you're not going to get to the stores quick enough.
That's right.
It's going to be a bigger problem than that toilet paper problem in COVID. Yeah. Okay. So if we're looking at day one, you're consulting
It's not.
somebody like entering the field. Would you be consulting in your practice? Would you consult an individual, or are you going in to kind of figure something out for a company, or are you advising the entire company?
It's not.
In one combination.
Some of our clients are very large, global firms.
Mhm.
And global firms have global problems. So they have to hire people who understand what's the difference between an attack that on their U.S. facility versus one on their facility in the Netherlands or wherever it might be. And there are real answers to that. And the answers differ by location. So we have to research that. And AI is an excellent way to research that. So if you've got a particular kind of company, a pharma, for example, a pharmaceutical firm, and they have a headquarters in Eastern U.S., but they have manufacturing facilities all over the world, and they want to protect their supply chain and their manufacturing chain, how do they do that? Well, I can go to my AI, and I can say, well, what are the risks and issues with this, that, and the other? You have to have basic knowledge so you can ask an intelligent question and ask a question where you'll get an answer that makes sense. So as we joked that you did before this podcast, that's what I do and my team does. When we have a new client, we ask questions, get the answers, refine our questions, get better answers until we're happy with the results.
Yeah.
Those in our analysis.
Well, here's the thing. So when I put into ChatGPT and I asked it, so I gave it the conundrum, the allure of cybersecurity and the shadowy side. I said, so what would a CISO need to do? And it came back with, okay, start with a strong foundation. Ensure traditional security measures are robust, blah, 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 kind of generic. And then it said, focus on transparency. Choose and implement AI solutions that are transparent and explainable. Like, well, which one's transparent right now, dude? Find me a transparent one. Okay, like easier said than done. And then it's also then security by design. Integrate security considerations throughout the AI development life cycle. Also, now this is really, is it your AI development or is it AI? Like you're meant to have an ear to the wall, like in what's happening in OpenAI. Like how do you security by design that? Because you don't know what's really happening there. You're just kind of hoping and guessing and wondering what if, right? Or what could be. And then stay updated. Yeah, read the press releases. This is what it says a security officer should be, a CISO should be doing. This is how they kind of need to, this is the beginning. This is where they need to start. And then it goes into some, obviously I said break that down because that was way too light. And then it gave me a couple other pages and it was like, but it kind of just went off. It didn't, and I'm no expert, but I got the sense from just understanding it well enough to know that it's not really telling me what I need to do. It's not really compartmentalizing anything. Maybe because to keep itself safe, I don't know. I was like, oh, just send them off. So deflect. But like, what would you do? Like when you look at the situation, you're probably not doing what I'm doing here. Like, do you have like a punch list of that you're willing to share? Like, do you have like, okay, so, step one is always going to be bang. Step two is this. Step three is get people together and implement, execute. Like, what would it be for you?
Well, these days with the AI and the ability to leverage that power to save time, first thing I would do is I would research that company. Hey, Gemini or hey, OpenAI or whoever it is, tell me about company X. And it'll give me a very good blurb on that company because it's got that information. It's public information. There's no risk in divulging it to me. So I'll get paragraphs upon paragraphs of information about that company, not just history, but plans and current state and so on. And if I'm not satisfied with the details, well, give me a little more detail on this, give me a little more detail on that. And then I compile all that information, meaning in my head or print it out, whatever it might be. And then as the next step, I say, all right, where are the major locations of this company? And it'll tell me that. Now, I'll go through, and this is something you can't do in one step. You could say, where are the major locations, and what are the issues that each location has to solve? What are the issues each one has to face? You're probably not going to get a good answer. Probably get something like, "As an LLM, I can't do that." Instead, I asked two questions. First, where are the major locations for this company? Stop. Get the answer. Okay, for Toronto, what does that facility have to worry about in terms of natural disasters, cybersecurity attacks, and whatever else I might want to throw in? And I'll get a detailed list. Okay, thank you. Now, what about the Moscow location or the New York location? And do that for a number of different locations, and you're going to get a good, solid database of knowledge that you built by asking individual questions. That's how you get good answers from an LLM.
It also probably tells you what the LLM knows too.
Yeah.
Because that's what everyone else could find out, right? It's like you can look at that through two lenses.
Yeah. So I could ask, who is the CEO of Coca-Cola or some company? It'll tell me. Is that CEO married? It'll tell me. Does that CEO have children? It'll tell me. What are the children's names and ages? It'll tell me. Now I'm collecting enough information, I can probably guess this guy's password. Because most, at least top management people, tend to use things they can remember as passwords. And I just collected all the information that they're likely to use. What's their birth date? Okay, I get that. So you ask a series of individual questions together, you're going to get a lot of information. Whereas if I said, give me all the relevant information on the president of Coca-Cola, it will probably say, I'm sorry, that's not something I can do. Which is very interesting. You break it up and it'll answer each question because it doesn't see the questions in aggregate because you're asking them one at a time. And even if you ask them one after the other, the AIs typically don't remember that or don't choose to remember that. They do remember it, but they don't choose to remember that. And so they won't say, wait a minute, you're asking too many questions about this company. They don't do that.
Not now, at least. Like maybe they'll start to, maybe there'll be like an algorithm or some just kind of measure of like policing, I guess, where it's like, well, you kind of get flagged, I guess, for researching something too much, maybe if you're using a large language. But again, we're talking about large language models. We're not talking about the things that people could build privately. Right. Okay, so that's step one. What's like step one is like using it to kind of give you a ground zero, a kind of base camp, right? Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to set up. Here's a potential of different things. Whether you use it to just find out what direction to go, but equally also to know what kind of threat there is.
Right.
And then the next is like to work with the people in the business to find out what it is that they have already in place. And hopefully it's just not, we use Norton. Like,
the second step is to work with people, but before I work with people, I want to know what tools this company has. And I can probably do that fairly easily by asking the AI and then telling it to scan the website and tell me what kind of protections are in place. And that won't give me complete information, but it'll give me enough that I know the direction to go in when I meet with the people and ask them those questions. It'll also potentially help me in case there's a physical element or aspect to it. It'll help me figure out which site should I target for a physical security test. And because you don't want to go to a company and say, let me do a physical security test, and then at the end of the day you say, oh, you're fine, there's nothing there. That doesn't work very well. It's also probably not accurate.
Okay, when you get like when you get to that stage, you've done your groundwork, you go in, you find out what they're using, find out who's in charge of what. So you factor in the human elements. You've got the technical elements there. I'm going to start using this. You got the meatware, you got the hardware, and you got the software. Okay.
I love
All right.
that. I'm going to have to remember that and use that. Yeah, what software? What kind of hardware? What meatware?
Yeah. Or the
Meatware?
wetware, right? So it's like you have those three. So you've got a good understanding of that company's landscape. You've got a good understanding of what potential threats there are, what they've been hit with before, because that's going to come up. Like here's what that's probably the first conversation when they last got beat up, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
and then
probably why I'm there in the first place, because they got breached someplace along the line. And they're
right,
trying to stop it from happening again.
yeah. So normally, so when it comes to like implementing solutions, when you look at like professionals in other places, like when it comes to like you kind of zip to the solution part, like when the consultant has to then whip together solutions. So like in business consultancy, they'll naturally then lead to, oh, okay, well, we need to have a CRM, we need a data solution, and we need a cloud network that's private for you. Like they have like these kind of just, they have products. They have the products that they kind of go to kind of like whip together this solution, which is really just them, putting these, kind of finding problems to fit their solutions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like they already have like a list of things that they have that they would normally apply. Do you have something like that, or is it always fluid, or are there like some go-to things that you would say, well, this is where we'd end up? It's complicated to put in place, but this is how we'd go about doing that.
Well, it's unique to the company because it isn't just the tools and technologies that they have. It's not just the policies and procedures. It's all of them together. So you have these great tools. What do you do with them? How do you use them? How do you monitor them? You'd be shocked how many companies have large capability for detection, but they never look at it. Target is a great example of that. Their breach of a few years ago was detected by their equipment, but nobody looked at it. So
Oh,
they
no
didn't
way.
know what happened.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Like the
That,
red light was flashing, guys. Like,
oh, I thought somebody was
okay.
turning. That's right.
Okay.
So every company is unique, not only in the kind of data they have, and then of course, it's we've been talking about the use of automation, but there's a lot of manual stuff that has to go into this that requires the expertise in security, both in terms of IT security, cybersecurity, and in terms of data security, which is not the same thing, and in terms of physical security, which is again not the same thing. So you have to have knowledge about all of those, and you have to be able to talk to the company and figure out, okay, what do you do if you get this alert? And make sure the answer is returned.
Who's going to get the message? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, we have this AI platform that will interpret this message. And it's like, oh, is that what you kind of just do? Like you roll your eyes at that moment?
I never roll my eyes because I want to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. No, but I mean, but that could, again, very well be something that they, maybe that's something that you do. Maybe you end up creating maybe Infosec becomes a bot, like, okay, so this guy is always gonna when that alarm is raised, it's gonna let you know. Okay, so who knows? I mean, there's gonna be like, the old antivirus software could now very well become, mini AIs of their own that are like very highly trained on specific actions and very limited in it.
That's a great segue into the use of AI in security tools.
Yeah.
So we talked about scenes a little while ago, and in fact, a scene should raise an alert when it detects certain things that you have to tell it in advance you want to know about, and it has to be able to detect certain things that are built into the platform out of the box, so to speak. So the SIEM has to be able to alert you, but lots of other tools need to have more than just rudimentary intelligence that's rule-based, that's based on an algorithm. And they are all getting that. Whether it's email security, which is now much more sophisticated than it used to be, it can detect potential attacks or attacks in progress very quickly. It
It's
didn't
not.
used to be able to do that. And AI is the element that can help it do that reliably and efficiently. So AI is very important in email security. It's also very important in data security. So if I've got a database or a data lake, better still, which is a huge body of data that's not structured very well, AI can help you monitor that. So you know what you've got, you know how you need to protect it. And there are products out there that do that, that look at data lakes and help you categorize it so you know what you've got.
It's not.
Lots of tools are using AI, at least they're in the early stages of using AI to analyze what you've got and what you're doing with it. And that's a very good thing.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
So it's kind of like you need it on both ends. You've got to be worried about it. You've got to find practical ways to actually use it internally,
It's not.
within systems and with your human capital. Like you need people to use it correctly. Parameters around the use. I guess when it comes to security, same kind of parameters that you would normally,
It's not.
put on people if you have something sensitive to talk about. Like there's things in the company you can't speak about elsewhere, and you sign contracts. Equally, you've got to kind of factor in. You don't ask people. Equally, don't ask AI, or don't put this information, make it available to this, because it's the same as sending it out there to the world. In fact, it's worse.
It's
Because
not.
we can't, we can't. It's very hard to compartmentalize at that point. It was impossible to compartmentalize at that point. So I can see it. So we were going to talk about my business, but we have gone over an hour now, and I feel like there's so many.
It's not.
There's so many things.
It's not.
I think we're gonna have to probably do another one for my company, because that's where we we don't unpack it to maybe we do this off camera. Actually, maybe we do that one off camera. Yeah, maybe we do it off camera. And once I've fixed all the problems, then we can show it.
Okay. This is
Yeah.
what we used to have. Of course, not anymore. But those are the problems we used to have.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Michael, how can people reach you? Because there are, like I say, a lot of my audience are early stage owner founders, equally people who operate within the AI space. There are people that work for companies, so there could be someone that might want to reach you. How will they go ahead and do that?
Well, they can send me an email. I read all my emails. Michael.Miora at Infosec Labs, INFOSECLABS.com.
Okay.
Michael.Miora at InfosecLabs.com. You can always reach me there. Or you can go to the website and there's a place to leave a comment there, and you can do that as well.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to actually speak to someone who knows what they're talking about and isn't just like one of those people who wants to jump on every AI bandwagon out there, someone who's a bit more cautious about how to actually implement it, go speak to Michael, because he'll give you the lay of the land.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Hey, Michael, thanks for coming on again. Listen, until next time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And this is a blast.